guys, welcome back. BDCKR here.
That was a funny hey.
It's a different one, yeah. This is season 14, episode 12 of our weekly Q&A thing. It's really just an excuse for us to yap. As like last week, I think we talked about very little that was not just whatever we wanted to, right? It was like questions right at the end. But to those of you who are on YouTube, which is most of you, you'll be watching something right now. Do you want to walk them through the team?
Yeah. All right. So current season 14, we're continuing with our evaluation of characters who are expected to be the upcoming challenge. This week it's Godfall Superman. So a lot of times we try to make them the star. Sometimes we try to make the best team that we can, even if they're not the star. And instead of doing good team, instead of doing anything like that, remotely like that, we are using the classic defensive draw team. Back in the day, so we talked a bunch about this whenever any of the challenges come up, is that there used to be a team that had the highest stats before we really had a good calculation of how to determine what your draws in multiplayer were. We knew that Godfall Superman, Shazam, and Darkseid were the team that would draw the most fights. They had zero synergy.
Yeah. And you could tell not only because you get a huge number of fights against them, but you could tell because in ladders, you fight people with increasingly high stats, right? They start at approximately at your stats and they get higher and higher. And when you would get to later fights in ladders with higher stat characters...
The ultimate ladder, like the longest 7th fight, typically, if you were using Euro maxed out Elite 7 level 50 characters...
The last couple fights would almost always be that team without any exception. Would it almost always or always? Now that I'm thinking about it. Pretty much always.
Early on in multiplayer, before there was augmentation, they were just clearly... Their stats were clearly head and shoulders above everybody else.
So you could tell. And the fact that you were always fighting them at the end meant that if you put that team in, that people would always be fighting you at the end, right? Or not you specifically, but you'd be in the pool, right, of options.
Yeah. So in a twist, we are using this defensive team as an offensive team, even though in the current state of the game they are way outclassed by a lot of other characters who have higher stats. Never mind if you've augmented their attack or health. Yeah,
and like you mentioned, they have no synergy.
Right. So Shazam Prime, he's got all 3 power generation gears. I think it's League of Assassins Knives, Heart of Darkness, and I Have a Stick. Darkseid, he's our tank, so he's got a bunch of defensive gears, including Astro Harness. I think in the current sort of loadout, Brandish Ninjato is a bit of a problem. Sometimes it's really great because he's got more health. He takes any kind of, splash damage. Mm-hmm. But every once in a while, you get a big problem. And maybe this footage, I'm not even sure if this footage will have it. I've bumped into a bunch of fights with this where the opponent has Master's Death Card. And because their splash damage ticks a little bit over time, it will generate a ton of power. There's that synergy between their Master's Death Card and our Brandish Ninjato that lets them get almost all of their power back, or pretty much all of their power back from having done the special, but not instantly, just really quickly as each bit of Master's Death Card splash damage hits. Mm-hmm. And that's despite the fact, they might have 10-2 totem, but they're not knocking anybody out, and they're just still getting the power back. Like, normally the strategy for me is, when I'm facing somebody with 10-2 totem, if one of their hit connects, and I've got Astro Harness, I get the invulnerability, and I don't have to worry about 10-2 totem giving me all their power back. I have to worry about Master's Death Card, though, if I've got Brandish Ninjato. So it might be worth swapping that out by the time we do our weekly recap. And, the other thing about Darkseid, he's only Elite 5, so he's definitely high enough for a team to get full battle points, which you see in these ladders. But it's also a little bit in between the high point, where he could be like Elite 7, or the better level, where he probably should be if we want him to be on a team that takes advantage of his passive with bronze teammates. The problem is if you're enhancing his bronze teammates with his passive, his stats are still so high that your opponents end up being matched to his stats and not what your bronze team guys are potentially capable of dishing out.
Yeah.
Like, it'll outclass their stats no matter what, but their effective stats are still not good enough.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It feels like it would bring everybody up to the same level, but what it really does is just bring them up to be bad, right? It makes them completely useless. It makes them go from completely useless to pretty bad.
Yeah, I think if I'd kept Dark Side maybe Elite 1 or 2, it would have been better, and then the bronze teammates would be able to handle the opponents pretty well.
Yeah, but then you're working at a really low battle point total, right? Which...
And I'm okay with that. Like, if there's something to be gained from the fun.
If it's interesting, I guess. That's fair. That's fair, yeah.
So, speaking about Godfall Superman, so the first impressions, we'll get into more detailed stuff on the Thursday recap, but this real trouble is that his special one is not ranged. I mean, he's still effective because he triggers his special one so fast so that he can hit as soon as he tags in, as long as he's got power, and can use Master's Death Card to his advantage for stripping gears. The first hit of Special 2 is not ranged. It's high damage. I don't really know what percentage it is. It's hard to tell. The last hit, the fourth hit, is also high damage. I think it's the fourth hit. I think there's 4 hits, right? Because the third hit is the freezing. So because the first hit is definitely not ranged, it means you can't start a Special 2 immediately on tag in with Master's Death Card unless you're willing to give that damage from the first hit, which is substantial. Third hit, freezing, does minimal damage. An alternative to Claw of Horus could be Necron Scythe, but Shattering Gears is just too useful. Mm-hmm. And I think, I don't know. Like, he still seems like he's doing a decent amount of damage most of the time to knock people out, but I can see there's a few fights where having Necron Scythe would have been the difference between knocking them out and not. Mm. So interesting team. It's fun. Remember you were just saying about the battle points, right? The massive battle points. This is clearly not the most efficient team to fight. Yeah. And I don't know if this will be the footage. I might have some footage of the first time this has happened where the device shut down because it ran out of memory to record. So the fight ends rather abruptly. Mm. Okay. Oh, and there's another one where there's a super that's done. Shazam does a super, but our own teammate Apocalypse is there. Mm. It's funny footage. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I think it's because tagging in and doing the super as quickly as I did, and it meant that at some point, clearly the game engine still thought Darkseid was in the game, in the fight. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And then before we get into our first question, you wanted to talk about one thing, because you've been training for something weird and specific. Oh yeah. So early update, I mentioned that I'm training for next year at the Canadian National Expedition so that I can win a prize at that hang contest on the rotating bar. They have to hang for 2 minutes, and so the more I'm doing it, because I don't have a rotating bar at home. Yeah, I've got equivalent size. Unfortunately, it's knurled, which the one at the X will not be. Yeah, so it makes it easier. There's 2 dimensions that it's easier. Yeah. Well, I guess yes and no. So here's the thing. It's definitely not pain. Or sorry, it's definitely not endurance. It definitely is the pain that stops me. It's not endurance, because I can still squeeze pretty hard, but it starts to hurt. And it makes sense too, because the pressure on your hands from your body weight is squeezing that tissue. When you squeeze that tissue, you're going to collapse the arteries. You're going to potentially put enough pressure on the capillaries, where the arterioles terminate, to cut off circulation a little bit. That starts to hurt. Yeah. And being able to adjust your grip will alleviate that. I'm definitely not doing that. 1 minute and 20, pretty easy. And as much as I'm training, I'm doing maybe a minute and 20, minute 30, because I don't feel like there's any need to push it yet. Mm-hmm. But I think the limiting factor is going to be learning to tolerate the pain. because I can alternate squeezing on the hands, and that's actually something I found that is a bit of a relief, where I can loosen one hand and squeeze the other one.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier just to hang. The hook grip definitely makes it easier. It takes less effort, but it still hurts.
Mm-hmm. So it's pain mitigation stuff.
Yeah, I think so. And the rotating bars, I think I said earlier, is what makes it harder to adjust, because if you're adjusting, it introduces movement. When you have a swing, there's going to be parts of the swing where there's less pressure, and then the parts of the swing where there's more pressure again.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting study, because I do deadlift, a single hand deadlift with a rotating handle. So I mean, I have an idea of how to compensate rotation, right? Part of that's just going to be wrist strength. And if you want to maintain control, you've got a little bit of wrist strength. You can maintain the position that you want, even if the bar rotates.
So I guess we'll just have to see how that goes. Keep us updated.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I think that will do for our sort of non-question part of our Q&A. We can start to get into questions a little bit. First one comes from Antivenom909, and they say, what's the multiplayer cycle for the next month or so?
So before I get into it, we maintain a Google Sheet that has historical information and likely upcoming characters, and we make that sheet available to all our patrons on Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes from, I want to say, the last 4 years, maybe more, of what it's been, and we keep maybe a few months of what it's likely to be for both the multiplayer challenge and the challenge stuff. The character challenge. So the multiplayer cycle, actually, you know what? I put notes, and I actually put notes not for the multiplayer. I did it for the challenge cycle. So the multiplayer is interesting. What I think the next multiplayer challenge is going to be is probably Scarecrow's Ventilator Mask. Oh, actually, before that, Godfall Superman is coming this week, right? So that should be Tentu Totem.
Yeah.
What are we on right now? What week is this? Yeah, it's September 9th. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Tentu Totem, Scarecrow's Ventilator Mask, Arkham Origins Deadshot, and Mother Box. And maybe that's the next month. But what's going to happen is that there was that sort of shift where they messed around with the schedule a little bit and then brought the rewards that they messed up. So it'll be a surprise to you probably as much as it will be to us.
Yeah, so we're not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you look at the spreadsheet, I've got a list of what it's going to be based on the last run, and then a list based on what it was of the run before that, before it had changed, that had been the same for I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of different runs.
So there we go.
Yeah.
So our next comment comes from Ollie Stop 3145, and they say, "Yo, help me please. For some reason, I don't have challenge mode, PZ, or BT. So PZ is Phantom Zone. What's BT?
Breakthrough.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know why. I have internet and I'm logged in my WBID account. Any idea why? I passed Green Lantern brackets boss and I'm level 11 online. Any tips, anyone?" And then another comment separately, but it's the same thing. So TTI7069 says, "Hi, does anyone know if Phantom Zone will ever be back? It says always finished for me."
All right, so what's interesting to me about this, more just than the question itself, is it possible that people watching this Q&A don't watch our weekly recap?
It is.
It's unlikely, but it's possible. Right, because the numbers are funny, right? So they're almost like they're usually five times as many people watch our weekly recap as this Q&A.
Although to me, I would say that, the recap is information that you can get mostly from Opening Injustice, right? What that is a quick video that saves you the need to open Injustice and check around and stuff, right? Or if it shows up in your feed and you go, "Oh, I wonder what's going on this week," right?
Yeah. But if you watch it, we actually address this most weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talk about this in a weekly recap of why events are not coming back. And events are what these guys are talking about, right? Phantom Zone, especially, Challenge. I hadn't realized Breakthrough was also, but I guess that makes sense. So what it is your clocks are out of sync, or they were at some point. This is what we warn against during that recap, right? If you time shift while you're connected to the internet and connected to the Injustice servers, you risk losing all events. Mm-hmm. So there's different levels of, I guess, potentially resetting it to try to get the server to recognize that your device is now in sync. And I'm not sure which one is going to be enough. And you start off with the easiest one with the least amount of risk. And that is, you got to fix your clock. You got to set it back to the clock, and be logged into your Injustice account with the right time and the right date. The next level would be to restart the game. And then this is where it gets a little bit iffy, right? Because you could clear app data. Problem with clearing app data, you need a backup. Now, you can trust the Warner Brother ID backup, which is good almost all the time, 99.9% of the time. Every once in a while, it fails. This is why in one of our glitch videos about the challenge reset, we say have a backup. The problem now is that the backups that we used or were aware of, Helium, which is great because it doesn't require rooting your device, Titanium, which works really great but requires a root. Oh, and Helium, though, even though it doesn't require a root, it does require you to have access to a computer and be able to hook your device up to a computer. Mm-hmm. But neither are available in the Google Play Store anymore. So clearing app data, and again, you got to have your clock and your calendar proper, and then reinstalling will work. Or sort of restarting the game where it reloads the app data. Yeah. Uninstall, reinstall. And at that point, it should be enough to get your game back in sync, as long as you don't keep on messing that up.
I will say, I think you are able to do backups and restores directly with files by connecting to your computer, right?
If you know where they are.
If you know where they are. So I think there is a sort of much more involved, annoying way of creating a backup of your phone.
But you have to know where, like, there's like a .obb file, right? There's like a bunch of things that sort of save your progress. And the problem really is that, I guess you need to be able to restore everything. But so it's in the case of a catastrophic failure where your Warner Brothers ID is corrupted. In my mind, though, if it really is that bad, it's corrupted, at some point when you're playing it, you're going to be messed around anyways, whether you actually clear your app data or not.
That's true. Yeah. So there we go. Mm-hmm. We have another comment. This is more of like a tech supporty kind of episode.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. A bunch of questions, I guess, from a long time ago.
TKCHYPER6344 says, do you guys know if Online Battle is still available? Because I'm trying to start it, but it won't let me register to an account.
TKC Hyper. If I'm going to... Do you ever do that? Do you ever find yourself trying to parse out the names to figure out which parts mean what and which parts
I often do. And then sometimes you just do it wrong. The problem is always that, communication is a leaky sieve, right? Or it's a leaky pipe where there's always stuff getting lost. So I'm always sort of aware of, no matter how much I think I know something, how easy it is for stuff to get lost, especially when you're talking about usernames, because there's so much variation, right? Sometimes it's totally random. Sometimes it's meaningful, right? Sometimes it's pronounceable in like the language or culture that you're from.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes it is noticeably a name, but it's in a culture or language, or there are vowel sounds or something that you don't have a handle on, right? Mm. They can be like Romanized, right? They can not even be never mind in English, but not in the same like text, right? Not the same characters. And so you know that there's been a level of translation, and then there's a second level of interpretation. So, a lot of times it's not that I give up, but you need to sort of scan it and figure out what mode you're processing it in. And in this case, I didn't process the last one as hyper. I was just like, these are just letters, right? And I went into random letter processing mode, and I just read out all the letters, right? Yeah.
So to Hyper's question, Online Battle is still available. It won't let you register to an account. That's interesting. I'm not sure. I'd be curious about, because here's the thing, right? With troubleshooting, there's sometimes, even if you know exactly what's going on, there's levels of understanding to get there. So does their register mean the same thing as us? Because if you take all the words at face value, all those things seem like it's actually not a problem. You can register. People are still using the online servers. There should be no reason why you can't take the account that you're playing with and either set up an online account or just log into your account if you've got one.
Yeah.
So come back. Tell us more. I think that's the one thing about troubleshooting almost universally is that the more precise detail, the better.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to troubleshoot or tech support when you don't have access to the device.
Yeah.
Because somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, and to be clear, I think that's almost everybody with technology would have some domain where they weren't, 100% confident in what they were doing.
Right.
But especially with like relatively less tech savvy people, or people who are relatively worse at communicating, or people who just don't have domain knowledge in this specific thing, it's really difficult to make sure that all of that important information is being communicated, and it's difficult to even necessarily know what information is important. So you end up with a situation where the easiest way, if somebody knows what they're doing, or at least knows what they would want to know, is to be sitting in front of that device and getting all the information themselves. And then, again, it's the exact same thing as the name, right? Where it's a leaky pipe, right? But it's a leaky pipe that, might not even be meant for transporting the type of information that you're trying to put through it, right? It's got all the wrong tolerances and stuff, right? It's made out of the wrong materials. So there's a huge advantage to just being in that seat, getting all that information.
Sure.
Because it's hard, because we say give us more information, but then, if you provide the wrong stuff, right? Communication between people is tough, right? And that's why sometimes you'll see people say, I'm running into this issue, and then they'll explain why they think they're running into the issue, and they totally get it wrong.
But you know what's worse, though, is because in a way my job is very much tech support. What makes it worse is when people, instead of telling you first and then telling you what they think is causing it, they tell you what they think is causing it without actually telling you what's happening.
Yeah.
So that makes it almost impossible for me to sort through stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is, especially when it's stuff that matters to people, for your own life, right? You will have opinions, and you'll have strong ones, right? Yeah. And when stuff is going on with you in your life, you're going to try to figure it out, right? Mm-hmm. And then sometimes you need to outsource to somebody who knows better than you. And I think the problem is that it is often difficult to know what you don't know, or know how out of your scope something is, right? And that can be in both directions. Sometimes something is way easier than you think it is, and your sort of hesitance is actually the main barrier, right? And then there are cases in which the fact you don't even realize that there's something that's out of your depth, and so your confidence is actually the main barrier, because you really feel like you know what you're doing, and then when you run into something maybe later in the process and you would have otherwise realized, and you go, oh, I really don't know what I'm doing at all. I'm actually like really out of my depth here. Yeah. Anyways, next comment comes from Darth Dan 3983, and they say, how to stop playing this game because the tapping was hurting my hands. I tried linking a remote to the game, but it didn't work. Sucks, because I love the game.
So this is funny to me for a lot of different reasons. I'll tell you what.
It's unfortunate.
Shazam, well, it is, but I have a different problem. I find swiping actually harder.
Yeah.
So to the point where I actually prefer characters who have specials that are tap. So you look at this. I mean, Godfall Superman, his special one is tap. I mean, the easiest one is the one where you aim.
Yeah.
Right? Where you just, the sliding scale, you have to catch it the right moment. Like, a lot of times I won't get the max, but I also don't have to put very much effort in it. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Flashpoint Deathstroke is so deadly, is because, and he's so fast, is because the slider is the fastest mini game that you can play.
Yeah.
And the tap, to me, alright, so I'm trying to think mechanically why, because tapping for speed, either the...
Well, it also might just be the amount of tapping over the course of playing the game. Like, all the tapping built up together.
Sure. But even with that, like even with the amount of tapping, it doesn't do a number on my hands nearly the same way that swiping does.
Mm-hmm.
Swiping, you have to go super fast to even get it if you want to try for the maximum. But tapping, I think it's because, so if you use the thermometer one, if you'll look at what are the dots that show up on the screen with the touches? What's that? Show
like the
touches?
touch indicators? I don't know.
Yeah. So you can see what I'm doing is I'm using 3 fingers, and I'm tapping all 3 fingers in like an alternating kind of pattern from 2 hands. And so you alternate 2 fingers in one hand, add a third one, and your speed is going to be more than enough to get you to the top of the thermometer without putting in too much effort. The one where you have to tap in the circle to fill the circle, because each time you do it counts and it stays, you just have to do a total number of times instead of going for speed at the moment where the thermometer stops and it registers. The circle is you just have to get a certain number of taps. So yeah, it is speed, but you also don't have to maintain the speed.
Yeah.
As long as you get it before the end hits, and the thermometer is like you sort of don't know when you have to be at the max speed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those taps are actually pretty easy, and I think part of it is because some of it's coming from you've got so many different joints.
Yeah.
So each finger's got 2 joints. Across each of those joints, you can generate the tapping that you need. Then there's your knuckles. Then there's a little bit in your wrist. And if you need to, you could, have a little bit of movement at your elbow, or maybe even like your whole arm. I mean, clearly it wouldn't be all of that because it would be exhausting if you had to do it through, if your shoulder was the only joint that was moving. That would be
horrible, yeah.
That would be horrible. But because you've got so many joints in sequence that and with the smallest ones having almost no mass, easy. Swiping, you're not getting any swiping value out of your little fingers, right? Like the little finger joints, because you can't bring it back fast enough. To bring it back, you really need the bigger muscles. It's exhausting.
Yeah. Well, what this is making me think of is when you're doing exercise, and specifically when you're doing something like skating or swimming or running or things like that, where the thing that you often get better at when you're going from like really beginner learning to sort of more novice or intermediate is that you get better at your efficiency of motion, and it makes it a lot less exerting to do the same amount of stuff. It's like one of the things is like when you're learning something for the first time, it just is physically really hard. Yeah. It's a lot more work. And so like, I've seen people like learn to skate, right?
Yeah.
And I find skating really relaxing. I find like I can skate for a while and I'm not working that hard, right?
Right.
And so, the skate squeezing my feet or, my hands getting cold, there's these things that make me tired about it. But the skating itself, especially if I'm not pushing myself to go at any particular speed, is really easy. But I'm like relaxed. My muscles aren't tensed very much while I'm doing it.
Right.
And, with the techniques that I'm using, I'm not actually doing that much, right? And then when somebody's learning, it's really difficult. And so this strikes me as sort of like not the same thing, but there's a similarity here, right? Of like learning
there might be
the necessary amount of energy to put into stuff, and repetitive strain injury and stuff. Like there's ways of hurting yourself that are different, but it just to me evoking that idea of like technique. Right?
I think that might be part of the problem too with people who are finding that when they hang on a bar that it's exhausting their arms because they're squeezing too tight. If you squeeze too tight, you're going to spend a lot of energy. You're going to waste it, and you're spending more energy than you need to actually hold on. And I think there was a video that I did at one point as background for one of these episodes where I was skipping for like, 35, 40 minutes just to see how much I could do it with the weight vest on. And that's the other thing too with skipping. When you see somebody who's skipping for the first time, they move a lot. Like their whole body, it's like they're jumping each time.
Well, like think about when we did Beat Saber for the first time.
Yeah.
How much more work it was. Yeah.
But part of the reason, I mean, at some point, it gets a lot easier, but not easy enough to be able to do endurance unless you train for it. But when you can learn to jump just enough, your body learns, or you figure out how much you need to jump to clear the rope without actually having to bend a bunch at the knees and your hips and like jump every time. Yeah. Oh,
that's like when I'm trying to swim, right? Like when I get in the pool for the first time in like a season, I swim pretty fast still, but I tire myself out way faster. And the thing is that it's really the thing that I sort of forget and that I get out of practice of is the efficiency of movement. If I'm really pushing myself, or you think not?
I don't think that's the case. I think sort of the movements that you do, the groove that you've got, I don't think you lose that. I think a big part of it is that your endurance goes. So I think when you're training, I think your endurance, if you just don't do any endurance training, it goes faster than your strength. So maybe after like 2 weeks of no endurance stuff, your body sort of deconditions. And so
you're a lot closer to your baseline.
Well, you go, I don't know if you go baseline, but you just lose a bunch of stuff where you just physically aren't as able to supply the oxygen to the muscles that are doing the movement.
Fair enough.
And maybe there is an element where you're not pacing yourself properly, that where if you could slow yourself. Oh, there's a funny video I saw. I don't even know what the race was. It was like an 800-meter race. And there is a guy who is supposed to be a pacer. I didn't know that they actually, for like big races, they actually have somebody who's not really a contender, but is there to help the other runners figure out, like, for endurance
So
stuff.
Are they not really a contender, or are they not a contender at all?
Well, this is why this one was funny. There's a guy who was the pacer, and he was way ahead of everybody.
Oh, and he won?
No, he lost. He was way ahead of everybody for the first 400 meters, and he was winning for about 730. And then every single person passed him before the end. Like
That's wild.
He just totally gassed himself.
But then how is that guy the pacer?
He was clearly not very good at his job.
So it's a job then.
Apparently, I was reading the comments, and somebody was saying, "Yeah, this is," or one person was saying, 800 meters. There's nobody pacing for those. That's not a thing. And then somebody goes, "Yeah, well, the money they paid me to pace a race I guess is nothing." So there are people who it's their job. They're meant to help so that with endurance stuff that you don't end up gassing yourself too early.
So then if he won the race, though, he's not getting a medal if it's his job, right?
Well, he could, I guess, if he's in the race. I don't know how that works.
I'm missing information.
I don't know how that works, because if they're actually in the race, it's different. If you know how with animal racing, like greyhound racing, they have that rabbit that goes around the track that the dogs are supposed to be chasing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same idea, but clearly it's not for pacing. It's just to give them motivation.
Yeah.
But that rabbit clearly can't win. But if you've got a person following the rules in the race and running and runs faster and finishes the race before everybody else, I guess they could win. I don't see why not.
But I just don't even know what that would look like, though. If it's a guy that's hired to try to help people set a pace, winning the race, he's not even like a participant, or they're not even a participant, I guess. I'm thinking about, because we're talking about a guy in this case, but
I guess they're relying on the fact that the people who are legitimate contenders are fast enough and physically better in a way that whoever they hire just can't be good enough to be at that level.
I need to look into it,
because if they could be that competitive, they could have qualified for the race and made money on the circuit.
But there's a very real chance that the pacer just is not a participant, right? Like it feels just like we just need to look it up, because either the pacer counts in the race or doesn't, and I imagine
that never occurred to me. It didn't matter to me enough. It was just funny to me that
the pacer was doing a really bad job. How do you know he's a pacer? Because
there's a comment. No, there's a comment. There's commentary on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, okay. Maybe if you have it, you'll have to link the video.
Okay. I'll see if I can find it again.
I'll want to see that too if you have it.
All right.
All right. Well, that does it for this week. We paced ourselves. We made it past the finish line. We're a little late, though. We're slower to the finish line than normal. So, to finish up, we'd like to give a huge thank you to our patrons on Patreon. That is Michael Devries, Irvin, Ruiz, Hoshi127, Nora Klimek, and Miguel, who are supporting us on the credited level. We'd also like to give a thank you to all of you for supporting us however you do. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.